was trying to explain a writer's room to one of my friends yesterday, like who has no idea, knows nothing about the industry. And I went back in my phone and I found like a video of us having a Nerf battle. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, one of our co-EPs like pulled out Nerf guns and just started like
Yeah.
aiming at people. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Growing up in Los Angeles, and I think of people who live here and who actually are from here, there's an essence and a vibe. And for you to work with Issa, and be a writer on Insecure, starting off as an assistant, from my understanding, to me that's huge. But it feels very LA-ish. It feels your demeanor, your je ne sais quoi, your swag, all feels very familiar and comfortable to me. And I think um, it's also what people liked about Insecure. It felt very comfortable. It felt honest. It felt real. It felt like I want to experience that. So congratulations, but you have stepped out on your own. And before we talk about rap shit, you're the showrunner. It's streaming on Max. Season 2 just dropped November 9th. You guys check it out if you haven't already. It is fun. It's inspiring, loosely based off the City Girls, if you will. But everything about it is dope. And I would like to know when you decided you were going to write, because it seems so nebulous. Like as a kid, I wouldn't know how to say, I'm going to write. And that's a profession.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for all of that. And I agree with you. Like when I'm in a space and it's I'm like a little awkward for the first time. The people who I gravitate to without me even realizing are usually from LA. They're usually the warmest people in the room. So I love that, and I love that you're
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, you feel it. You're like, oh, this is my homegirl. Literally my homegirl.
Yeah. But yeah, when did I decide? Really early. I think 11, like 11 years old was when I had a name for it. So prior to that, and just all throughout my coming up, I loved reading. I loved I loved reading, and I was curious about people. And so there was a
Mhm.
time where I thought, I was like, what is this? When you just like ask people things about their life and you like discover their stories and like their pitfalls, like, and you
Mhm.
like, maybe I'll be a psychologist. I remember thinking that when I was 9, like interviewing my big cousins and about their
Mhm.
boyfriends and being like, have you tried this? Like, I don't
You were
uh,
solving problems.
yeah, I just want to like problem solve and ask people questions about their lives. And I love
Uh-huh.
doing that. But then I also really loved reading. And then I think, so it was when I was 11, I'd had like my first little boyfriend in school. It's like a little 3-day relationship. And he was over me. He broke up with me and I was hurt.
Nuh-uh. Uh-uh.
And so I wrote a short story about him in class, like during our like downtime. And I like volunteered to read it. Um, Yeah, it was a horror story. It was a slasher. It was a slasher. I
What
wrote
happened? What was the story? The
I'm trying to remember
summary, if you will.
something like the power goes out in our school or in our classroom, and like a murderer comes in and like targeted the class, but specifically chose him and sacrificed him in front of everybody. And so
Are you kidding? Oh, you know you can't do that now. They send you to principal office for that. You can't do that now.
no.
How
Everybody was so
not
amused.
hilarious, but hilarious. How,
Everybody
huh?
was so amused, but him. And the thing is I changed the character's name just a little bit. So I was like, it's not him, it's not. This is a work of fiction.
His name is like Tom. You're like, it's Jom.
Exactly. But so the reaction though that I got from like my
Yeah.
classmates, people were either like laughing or like just shocked, upset. Like I was like, ooh, I love this. Like I just love that feeling. Like that might be crazy, but I was like, I enjoyed coming up with this story. It felt very like cathartic for me. And then also the response that I got from everybody in my 5th grade classroom, I was just like, this, I love this. Like, I want to
Mhm.
bottle this. I want to do more of this. Um, and yeah, after that, I was like, I'm going to be a writer. And nobody knew what I was talking about. I barely knew what I was talking about. I think like what I was writing and how I saw my career was something that continued to like really present itself to me as I was progressing in my journey. Like TV writing wasn't something that I considered at the time. I didn't even know that was a thing, or
Hmm.
know how to go about doing it. So it's really because of my relationship with Issa that I've been able
Right.
to like see,
Right.
oh, this is how you can do it, and this is how you can do it your way.
Here's what's interesting. I know so many people who are, and I mentor a lot of young girls too, who want to do something, whether it's forward facing in front of the camera or behind the scenes, but they want to be involved in production in some type of way. And I'm always like, just be around, just be in the mix, because that energy that'll help create and cultivate for you. And it's also important, I think, to be willing to make many mistakes. So how did you form a relationship with Issa? Was it before or after she blew up on Insecure?
It was before. So we I had briefly met her pre Awkward Black Girl when she was
Oh,
directing. Yeah, she was
for
directing.
the listeners, that was her YouTube series, right? That she had. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really popular. If you
It was.
don't know, it was very popular. So you met her pre Awkward Black Girl?
Yes, briefly we had met.
Uh-huh.
She was directing something that I was a part of that ended up kind of like going away over time, but we met briefly there. And so then I was just kind of like, I saw her again when Awkward Black Girl was like popping.
Hmm.
Oh, I know her. I remember her. I wonder if she remembers me. And then she was also hosting this workshop designed to kind of show people how to create their own stuff and like how to go about putting it up and like, getting funding. And I had written my first thing and I was like, I don't know what to do with it. And so I went to the workshop, and after the workshop was over, I like stood in line to talk to her, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me. Like, I'm a writer. I have this thing that I wrote." And she's like, "Send it to me." And she gave me her email address. I sent it to her. She she read it very quickly, like over the weekend, and got back to me and told me she loved it. And so that was actually which was just mind blowing and really affirming because again, it was the
Wow.
first thing I'd written. Yeah.
It was the
And
first thing you had written, you say?
it was the first thing
Wha-
I had written to completion, the first script that I had written to completion. And
And
it
it
was
was
called,
that Jaded?
yes, that's So Jaded. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so we did So Jaded together. Issa actually went and got the funding. She started Color Creative, where she was able to like help, people with diverse stories make their stuff. And she shot 3 pilots. One of them was mine. So Jaded, and so we did that. I think in 2014, and by 2016 was when Insecure was picked up to series, and then she
Okay.
brought me on to that. So that was kind of like the beginning of our relationship, and um, yeah, and I guess my pathway to where I am now.
Yeah, well, first of all, good for her for being curious and looking for talent. That's a lesson in itself. Like she could
Yeah.
how many times do people say let me read it and never get back to you? But whatever for whatever reasons, she said this is it. She felt it. So it's good to know that, you also as a talent can recognize talent, which is clear here. And then you get this opportunity to be in the writer's room. I
Mhm.
want you, by definition, not even to describe that writer's room for Insecure, but by definition, for those who are listening and they don't know what a writer's room is, what is a writer's room on a series, on a television show that airs, weekly or monthly for whatever reason? What is a writer's room?
Writers room, so it's a collection of writers, and I've been on staffs between 6 people to like 12 people. Sometimes it can be more, but writers that all come together. We're usually in the space that's kind of like a conference room, sort of, customized to whatever your vibe
Hmm.
is. Um, and there's a showrunner who is kind of like leading the discussions, that's leading the vision of the show, and who kind of starts these sort of conversations where you're able to kind of come up with stories together and bounce ideas off of each other and come up with jokes. Like, you're doing all of that, the breaking of the story and the writing of the story, like kind of in this sort of collective environment. um, And then you'll have a writer who will go off and like, actually pen the script. But it's like really, it's a collaborative process, TV writing is anyway. Yeah, and I think, you go episode by episode. I can get super granular, but like I think like that's the gist of it really is
Yeah.
just a collection of people writing together.
Now, that's is that would you consider it an intimate say a space or an intimidating space? Like what adjectives would you use to describe a writer's room?
Hmm,
An ego-driven space, a friendly space?
it depends on what room you're in. It really does. Like, because it depends on the people. Like, every room is different, and I've been in a few. Um, and I'll say like Insecure was it felt intimidating to me when I got there because I was an assistant, and it's something I wanted so badly, And I think I was realizing like how smart so many of these people are, and
Oh,
how self-aware you also have to be to tell stories about people.
what do
And
you mean?
like if you're telling a story about a relationship or a friendship that fell apart, it's like, have you been able to like adequately reflect on those things in your own life to be able to pull out the nuance in that, like to speak to the emotional hurdles or whatever, you know what I mean, that you might experience. And so I think the self-awareness really surprised me, um, and challenged me and made me want to, step up to the plate. But I enjoyed like that first season of just being kind of like a fly on the wall sometimes, and hearing the way 10 different people think and like process, you know, one thing. Like, if we're talking about like season one, the idea of like Jared,
Mhm.
and is he gay because
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
because he had this experience, and like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
should he take Molly back when she pops up at his door? Like, you're gonna get 10 different opinions about that, and like, and you'd be surprised like how far we go in like
Yeah.
talking about,
Mhm.
which way to go with some of these stories and some of these
What
characters.
what a beautiful, beautiful creation it sounds like. I mean, I know it can be intimidating and there are probably other things that are happening outside of it, but at its essence, that sounds very pure to me and
Oh,
it sounds
beautiful.
beautiful. It
It,
sounds so
it
beautiful.
It is actually really beautiful. And what's funny is I was going through like some of my old like photos, because
Yeah.
okay, so I was trying to explain a writer's room to one of my friends yesterday, like who has no idea, knows nothing about the industry. And I went back in my phone and I found like a video of us having a Nerf battle. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes if things were tense and we're struggling to break a story, like we had one of our co-EPs like pulled out Nerf guns and just started like
Yeah.
aiming at people. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Let's go.
And now we're all like, we're having fun and we're laughing. Like we did puzzles together, and
Yep.
like, we have all these different little. 'Cause we spend so much time together having to open. You have to pour yourself out to, I
Yeah.
think, to do it well. Um, and so it has to be a comfortable space. It has to be a safe space. There are spaces that are not like that, but
Mm.
Insecure was, and I think that I realized that it could be beautiful. It could be fun,
Yep.
um, and so yeah, and I carried that into how I put together the Rap Shit Writers Room.
You said you started off a little insecure because you were, no pun intended, because you were an assistant on Insecure. But do you think the more comfortable you got with yourself, your relationships that you've had, your interpersonal, personal relationships, did that make you more confident as a writer to speak up and share, or was it affirmation from the room that made you feel more safe? Essentially, I want to know what you felt helped you transition while there, so you could ultimately be a writer on the show.
I think it was initially it was affirmation. I think the like self confidence hasn't come until I've now have done it myself.
Hmm.
But I think just coming from Insecure and as an assistant, there were so many writers on the show who were affirming and laughed at my jokes when I said something. I'd be
Hmm.
like shaking, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
under the table. But it's like, hey, I have a thought, and I think, recognize something in me and encourage me. I can pinpoint very specific writers who were like, oh, you got this. Like, and even Regina Hicks, who hired me and actually staffed me for the first time. And yeah, there were a lot of people who believed in me. And so that just, and I was like, oh, I think I am really good at this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Oh,
but the confidence, I think, is more of a recent thing,
oh,
really.
really? So wait a second. So you get you have this show, Rap Shit, and you're the showrunner. You're the one in the room throwing out ideas. You're the one talking to the writers, saying we should be doing this, that, and a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is part of Issa Rae's production company, I believe, as well, right? This Rap Shit. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you now can see the distance. But even as you got the job as showrunner, knowing that this was going to be your role and what that would require, you were not confident? Was it after season 1? Was it the start of season 2? Which
It
is
was
just like
after season.
yesterday. I was like, just yesterday.
It was after season one, but
Wow.
during season one, I was like, oh shit, like just consistently, like, oh shit, like I was
Wow.
determined, like I know I can, because it's one thing to say, okay, I know I can write, but it's another thing to say, can I lead, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
then like, do I trust my vision, my decision making? Do I trust that I've put the right people around me to support me? Like, you know what I mean? There's so much that goes into
Mm,
putting together a whole TV show, and there's so many people, there's so many decisions to make. And I think like um, trusting your decision making is,
everything.
it's everything. And
It's
it's
everything
something
in life.
in life, I think like this role has completely changed my life, and like changed the way I see myself, the way I understand myself, the way I understand my purpose, you know and grown me in incredible ways. Like, yeah. And I think, after, so season one, I did it scared. you
I
know i
love
did it
that.
I did
That's
it
my
scared.
favorite saying. Do it scared. That's my
Yeah.
favorite saying. Hmm.
Yeah. And then I saw, and even like when season one was airing, and it's just like, how are people going to respond to the show? You don't know. And I remember reaching out to Issa and saying, how do people do this? Like, how do
Yeah.
you put something out into the world and then just hear people talk about it? And like, how do
Yeah,
you
it's hard.
survive this?
It's hard.
And not knowing if we were going to get a season two or not, I'm like, the anxiety, like, how do you live like this? This is not like,
This
what am
is
I
not what it's
doing?
meant to be. Yeah. But you guys, listen, you have to realize, Syreeta, this premiered last year. So she's watching it in real time and describing what she felt, which was not that long ago. And it to me, sometimes confidence comes with repetition of consistently being great, consistently showing up, consistently making the decisions that other people probably wouldn't want to make, but
Mhm.
you have a feeling that it's good. And I thought the show was amazing, and I thought it was interesting to me that it was had a heavy social media emphasis, which made me in the beginning say, wait, can I really get into this? Because I'm not like a social media, but it made sense to me and it made me want. And I'm like, oh, is that how they do it? Like, it's also for people who don't live their lives on social media. It's also very like, in a way, like, this is true. This is what people do. This is what they live for. And my friend is a manager, and he manages a few acts. And he said the reason why he liked Rap Shit was because this is what he feels it's like. Like, I'm
Mhm.
listening to music and somebody's always in his DMs or sending him something. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, so it's true. Now, is one of your writers, I read, used to be a tour manager? Is that how you're able to infuse that authenticity? Am I incorrect in saying that?
Yes, he managed a couple acts, and he was also a tour manager as well. He's done both roles,
Wow.
and for a while, for a long time, and has so many stories, and is now a writer. Left the music industry,
Mm.
um, and came over to this side because the music industry is tough. And I feel like that was something that was I keep learning, like, dang, this is a rough space to get into. It's hard.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's where a lot of the stories come from. But also, we have a couple people in the room who've also been on tour, who've been the talent
Mm.
on tour. Um,
Mm.
Yeah, very talented group of folks. And
I love it. I feel like can we? You should give you can make some side hustle money. Not that you need it, but we should be able to tour a writer's room. Like y'all need to be at work and be on display, and we need to be able to listen in, almost like like they do the cops and the bad guy in the movie, and the other cops, the detectives can listen to the investigation, if you will. I need that. I need that. You guys should put. Y'all
what?
should
I
do that.
would watch that. I
It
would
would be so
absolutely watch that.
amazing.
It would be like
Amazing.
The Office, but like
Yes.
you get to
Yes.
see the like a mix between, I guess, The Office and like Project Greenlight or something.
Yes. Yes. And I want to see how it's made. And I want to get to know the folks. I would love that. FYI, you gonna keep that girl because I'm gonna watch that too. For your for rap shit. Can I ask you what the idea is outside of two best friends trying to make it? What are you hoping to portray for the culture, for us, for
Mm,
women?
I think the biggest thing for me is like, um, I want to see women making it, like you said, but like feeling empowered while doing it, finding themselves, making mistakes. I think it's just hoping to kind of like pull back the curtain, humanize women in this experience, I think, in a way. There's also, I get a lot of like comments about the type of characters that are on the show, like they're pimps and sex workers. And Mia, when she first started, she's a former stripper,
Mhm.
OnlyFans. Um, and I think those stories also matter. Those are also like people who have hopes and dreams and families that they love and like things that they're striving for. I love getting to like tell stories about them as well because I feel like they get discarded and
Mhm.
I don't know. I love that the show comes from kind of two different POVs when it comes to like what does it mean to be a woman, and how you show up. And I think like with Shauna and Mia, they're so different, but they're also like both kind of coming of age at the same time and influencing one another, figuring out what they want for themselves. Like I want people to feel inspired by seeing that, and also be less hard on themselves. Like, we're all just kind of figuring it out as we
Mhm.
go. And so, and then I also just want people to just enjoy themselves and feel like they are seeing a slice of the culture and that it feels authentic. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, like I'm so passionate about making stories for us, um,
Mhm.
that we really resonate with, and that's not to like too far on the one spectrum of trauma or too far on the spectrum
Mhm.
of, what I mean. It's like it has to be so perfect. It's, like, you know what I mean. It's like real
Yes.
life.